Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning. It's nice to see everyone filter in really quickly. Gosh, appreciate that.
Shauna, why does your screen say you're Carrie White?
Because I'm using Carrie's account so we can record these sessions. Once this entire series is over on Friday, I will send out a link because I'm loading all of these. I'll explain. I'm loading all of these individual sessions that we're doing. They're being recorded, and then I'm loading them onto our Smart University YouTube channel that I've created, and I'll send out that link so you can go back and look as a refresher. And then if for anyone has missed something, they can go back and watch, or for the few that maybe didn't attend at all, they think they want to get some benefit out of this, they can do that. And to be able to do that, I needed a paid account. So Carrie graciously let me borrow his.
All right.
Thank you for asking, and thank you for giving me that reminder to let everyone know that this is being recorded. I'm trying to mention that every day, but just want to make sure everyone knows. Let's go. Okay, looks like there's 13 of us here. So let's go ahead and jump in. Thank you all. Hope everyone had a good past few weekend and past few days since we spoke last specifically about this. I want to jump right into this. For now, I'm not going to mute anyone because there doesn't seem to be a ton of noise. If you've got something else going on, please do. Let's just try and mute yourself. Whoops, sorry about that. There we go. Just mute yourself. Okay, I'd prefer if I can to leave you all unmuted just so that it's easier to ask questions and you don't have to stop and unmute yourself and all that. Okay, I want to talk really briefly about scope creep, and that's kind of project management 101, which of course, if you're working anything with Lean Six Sigma, like I mentioned before, you're a project manager, and quite frankly, regardless of your current role, you're all a form of project manager because you work all types of different things, whether they're formal projects or not. So again, scope creep is just doing that and one more thing type of thing. So by keeping to your original scope and really define what your scope is, and again, what the scope of a project is basically what are you doing. Keep it clean, keep it concise. I found that people tend to be much more successful when they define exactly what they're going to do, and then quite frankly you stick to it. You can do one more thing, and it'll be that much more savings, and that's great. Sometimes it makes sense, but most of the time it ends up being very difficult to measure, and even more importantly, it's difficult to control. So say that on there. And that, on this graphic here, one thing it mentions is, gold plating. In other words, we'll do one more thing because again, it looks good, it's fancy, blah, blah, blah. It looks like it bounces up the numbers. But again, it's about that, that whole DMAIC that we've talked about already, that define, measure, analyze, improve, control. And I'll mention again that control piece is among the biggest, most important pieces of those 5 steps, because again, if you don't have controls in place, you end up going through a lot of work, and things can fizzle out pretty quickly. So hopefully that makes sense. And again, this just again, part of scope creep is when you start talking with the people around you, whether it's a manager, whether it's a vendor, whether it's your client, employees, whomever, say, oh, well, you know, and you could do this, and it would be nice if it did this and do this and do this. Avoid getting to the point where you practically feel like you need to say, and do you want fries with that? Again, hopefully that makes sense. Put in here, you know, create a parking lot, which are any of y'all familiar in business terms with the term parking lot?
No.
Okay. Well, a parking lot is, if you've ever been in a meeting, has any of us been in a meeting, and raise your virtual hand or mentally, whatever that may be, or you've been in a meeting and you walk out and you think, I don't feel like we really accomplished a lot. There was a lot of talking, but not a lot got done. And that happens a lot, quite frankly, because people start having ideas and things get into these conversations. Well, what if we did this? What if we did this? But no decisions were actually made. A way to avoid that type of thing, both certainly in a meeting situation, but especially in projects, is when someone says, and geez, could we do this? Could we do this? Could we do this? A great response is, that's a great idea. Hold that thought. We're going to put it in our parking lot. In other words, we're going to set it aside and we'll come back to it later. I mean, it's not gone completely, but we're going to come back to it later and revisit it. But let's stay on hand. Let's stay focused. Let's take care of what we're working on now. And we can come back and look at that at a later time. So does that make sense in that context?
Yes.
So basically it's a holding area, and it could be, quite frankly, it could be a post-it note. It could be a note on your calendar. Hey, note to self, in whenever, you know, I anticipate being done with this project on this date. So give myself, you know, by this date, I'll reach back out to this person or work with myself to, you know, continue on with that thought. That's a parking lot. All right. So I'll ask now, because this is day 4 of the six days that we're working on this learning about Lean Six Sigma. I'll ask, do any of you not have a project identified yet? For those of you who are planning on going through and certifying.
Yes.
I do not have a project yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have one yet either. I'm just catching up right now.
Okay.
I do want one.
Well, okay. And so let's talk about this. And for those of you, whether you haven't picked one out yet, or quite frankly, if you have one, this is a great, one of the reasons I put this slide in here is, again, to really talk about, is the one you picked really the right choice for you? Or if you haven't one, this is a great guide to picking a project, which is, first of all, it helps you. You need to make sure that whatever you do, of course, you're moving the needle, right? You need to move the needle a little bit. That's the idea with any type you're going through, especially a certification project. Now, don't feel like you need to, you know, move the earth and do all these great massive things necessarily, but you definitely want to move the needle. And one recommendation I tend to give people is, look at the world you're in now. How many of us are working in a position right now? And please raise your hand, a shout out if you're among them, because I would love to hear where you're working, where everything goes perfectly every single time. Doesn't really happen much, right? Because quite frankly,
no.
you know, and that's just it. So I ask 3 questions in general, and some of you have probably heard me say this. First is, what's going well? This is a great way to answer, well, what project should I be working on? What's going well? Okay, you know what's going well in your world, right? Where are your challenges is the next question. And honestly, just even if it's just get out a yellow pad of paper and write it down. Do something, notes on your phone, on your laptop, whatever that may be, right? So what's going well? Next, again, where are your challenges? What problems are you seeing? write some of them down. Geez, I'm not getting this done, or there's too much this going on. I've got so much going on to the day. I need more organization. This thing is too slow, whatever that may be. Or I'm not getting enough communication about whatever, right? Then the last question I ask, and I'm not being facetious, joking about this. This is a genuine question. And the last question I ask is, if you had a magic wand and could change anything about your world, about your professional world, what would you change? And the reason I ask that question is sometimes people think, well, this is going well, this isn't going well, and geez, it would be nice if we could change this, but gosh, that would require a whole new system, and I know that will never happen, or that would require, you know, some big change that, you know, can't do that, blah, blah, blah. So that's why I asked that last question of that magic wand question, which is, if you could change anything, what would you do? And sometimes that means that answer is going to be up really, really high, kind of high in the sky kind of thing, like we'll never be able to get there. But sometimes you can get somewhere, you know, in the middle, right? Somewhere closer to your reality. So it's basically a brainstorming question. So what would you like to change? If you're in sales like you, Cindy, you know, what would you like to change? Would you like to be able to increase your capacity to reach out to more potential clients by 50%, 75%, whatever that number may be? If yes, okay, what would that be? Would you like to be able to sign more, whatever, more clients by this, whatever, better margins, better whatever you think is that pie in the sky, and brainstorm with a couple of those questions. And that's a great way to come up with an idea for a project. Also, for those of you who are in the recruiting thing, think about your pain points. Again, back to that very first day when I asked, what are your pain points? In other words, what kinds of things are creating problems in your professional world? That's where you start to go to and pick apart a bit, like, why are we doing things like that? And I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it, really do question everything, pick things apart. Why are we doing something? Why we're doing it? Well, we're doing it because Shauna said so, or we're doing it because Kyle said so, because X, Y, Z. Well, push back and say, well, why are we doing it? Is that really the best way to do it? Can we do something? Can we do it better? Sometimes the answer is absolutely yes. Sometimes the answer maybe no, because it's company policy. And that's a great response, right? But even that, I would say, why is that our company policy? Is that still continue to pick and make some get, but down into that root, why are we doing something? Make sure you really understand that why behind something. Which brings me to this, and I throw this in all the time because this is a really good way of putting things, which is, quite frankly, sometimes questions truly are more important than your answers, than the answers you get. So it's understanding how this is going to help your business and you in your role. Quite frankly, one way I have of putting this is, when you really start to pick things apart and peel back the layers of the onion, whatever metaphor you want to use, when you get in there and really start diving in and questioning things, you get all kinds of different answers. And among those answers, you'll also get not only just the answer itself, but you also get other things like, what people around you, what they understand about a process as well, which that in itself can show you shortcomings of a process, maybe a training issue, right? How many of us have worked with employees that truthfully, when you get down into it, maybe they're in a great role, whatever, but they just weren't trained properly, or we ourselves weren't trained properly. Okay, and along those lines, I want to talk really briefly about emotional intelligence. How many of you have heard that term, emotional intelligence? Hopefully at least some of you. Because this is not just business 101. This is definitely not exclusive to Lean Six Sigma. This is certainly in business 101, as well as, quite frankly, even relationship 101. Anyone heard of emotional intelligence? No?
Yes.
Okay. So again, the definitions is there on the screen. I'm certainly not going to read it for you, But can anyone give me your opinion of why you think emotional intelligence, why I would bring up emotional intelligence when I'm talking about improving processes and certifying, doing a yellow belt, green belt, whatever that may be, doing for Lean Six Sigma? Why would emotional intelligence play a factor?
I think because in this process, you're also dealing with people. So kind of like each boxes relates like team leadership and having relationship management, all of those things would come into play as well.
Absolutely, that's exactly right. Because again, and I've used the example, and I don't remember it's with you guys or the group I'm doing in the afternoon, or maybe both, where I've mentioned before, worked recently with a gentleman who was with one of our clients who went through all of this, and this guy's in IT, and he was doing all kinds of, he threw himself into the heavy math statistics stuff with Lean Six Sigma. I mentioned before, I think he did, regression analysis. He's doing all this really complicated charts, tables, blah, 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 and could do that very easily because he's an IT guy, right? That's kind of his wheelhouse. That's easy for him. But one thing he told me, the challenge for him with doing this whole project is working with people and negotiating with them, because quite frankly, part of working a project with this is you're dealing with change management. And ultimately, at the end of the day, change is hard. Even when you walk through the door and you tell someone, I'm going to improve your processes, I'm going to save you money, I'm going to reduce risks, I'm going to increase efficiencies and inherently improve your safety record, that should be a no-brainer, and you should think, oh, people should be jumping up and down excited for that. But a lot of times people, what they hear when the meaning behind that, what they're hearing is, my world's going to change, I'm not going to know how to do my job anymore. Even some people get into the thing of, you're making these improvements, whatever, to reduce headcount, and I'm going to get laid off, or my peer is going to get laid off, and it's scary, and that's not what this is about. And one thing I've always told people is, the point of all of this is to make things as efficient as possible, because we all have systems that we work in, even if it's just good old Microsoft Word and Excel, right? Email, all of that stuff. Let's use all those systems, whether it's TempWorks, you're dealing with a company that's dealing with Oracle, SAP, all of those types of order management systems, things like that, or something like that. Use all the different mechanical tools, so to speak, that you've got around you, systems and things like that, to work as much for you as possible, so you can do the things that those machines can never do, which is to really build relationships, negotiate with people, do other things, use your analytical skills to, quite frankly, improve your world around you for your role and improve the business. That's really what it's about, and that's why this is important. And that's also really why I like to mention this. And I'll repeat myself over and over, and this will definitely not be the last time you hear me say, question everything, but of course we have to do it in a respectful way. It's not just like, well, why should I do that? But can you tell me more about this so I understand this better? Because, and one thing quite frankly, and some of you may have heard me say this, if not just as part of this class, but quite frequently when I introduce myself for the first time, part of what I say is, I'm a professional pest. Hi, my name is Shauna and I'm a professional pest. People will laugh at that, but then I explain. I ask a lot of questions, and I do that not because I'm trying to be that pest, but I'm trying to understand more about the processes, so I can understand, if I'm here to help, so I can understand how I can better help you, help the company, and everything along that. It makes sense? Hopefully. Okay, I want to talk about process maps. How many of you are familiar with process maps? Anybody? Or seen them, even if you haven't done one yourself? You've seen them, hopefully?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Well, as part of working any project, you should be able to process map. And anyone who certifies with the project, you will do at least 2 process maps, because you'll always have a current state process map and then your finished state after you've made your improvement process map. This is an example of a cross-functional process map. And I will, just to see if y'all can see the screen, if you look at it, it's pretty basic, right? Like a start here, always have that oval, which is called the terminator. You got one at the start and one down at the bottom as for the end, so you know where something starts and it ends. And it's got these different lanes, and these are called swim lanes because it's kind of like the swim lanes in a pool. So it shows the different teams or different groups that are working the whole process, right? And it shows, okay, well, customer places the order, sales team receives the order, they process the order, sends it on to completes the order request, then it asks the question, is it complete? If it's yes, it ships the products and goes on. If it's not, they purchase supplies, right? And then goes back to completes the order request and then goes on, right? Goes on, blah, blah, blah. Seems pretty basic, right? And again, process map 101. You can do process maps in something like software that's specifically for process mapping, like Visio. Or Lucidchart's a free version of it. Quite frankly, you can do it in Excel, you can do it in Word. I've seen people do process maps using Post-it notes stuck on a wall. You can do it on a pad of paper. Quite frankly, I don't care what you use to do your process map. And again, I'll show you when it comes time, if you're working on a project, I can show you more of that. But 101, you just need to be able to show the flow of how something's going. Sometimes they're called flow charts, right? Sometimes it's called process maps. In Word itself, MS Word, that you all should have a copy of, right? If you bring that up, when you can do, you can go into insert shapes. All the basic process map shapes are in Word. So even just in Word, you could do this. But again, you could use pen and paper, I don't care. One thing I'll say too is the process map is always done at what's kind of called the 10,000 foot level. Something like an SOP, which is standard operating procedure. Some people call it an instruction manual, whatever that may be. That's really detailed, right? That's where you're getting into, you do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this. Well, the process map is really high level. And you're not getting into the minute details. So that would be like, if say you're talking to the president of a company, he's like, explain to me what you do. You're not going to say, well, I go into this system, I do this, and then I do this, and I click this, and then I send this on to, Mary or Bob or whoever, and then I do this. You're not going to go that great detail. You're going to just tell very high level, right? So you always want to go very high level. One thing too I'll say is, you don't want to go so high level that, and I'll go back to this, whoops, sorry, that one. You see how this one has this, it's asking questions in order to complete. And we'll talk here in a moment about this, that diamond shape is a decision point in a process. Every process map should be at a very high level, but it should never be so high that you never have a decision point in a process. You should always have a process map. There is should always be some decision point in there. All right. And again, this shows swim lanes in here. So it shows different teams, different groups working a process. And sometimes the way this is beneficial of breaking this out like this is, so it's very clear who is doing what. And that sometimes too, when you show teams, when there's more than one team working on a process, when you're in the process of improving something or working on a project, having the different teams see it like this, it makes it much more apparent that, hey, Bob in accounting or whoever in accounting or payroll or whatever other team can't do what they need to do because they're waiting on me to get something done, or and vice versa, right? So that becomes very apparent, so people understand how connected things are. That's what that's about. Makes sense? One thing I have had more than one person tell me, well, what I do is too complicated. I couldn't possibly map it. It's way too complicated. And this map on here, I picked this graphic purposely because this is a pretty wild process map. You very rarely see anything this complicated. And quite frankly, I think this is an exaggeration of a process because I see lots of ends and start points. So this is probably multiple process, frankly. But I have helped teams with incredibly detailed multi-team processes, map stuff. It can be done. Again, it's don't overthink things, get up at that higher level, think simple. And again, when each of you get to the point where you're ready to start your process maps, if you get stuck, if you need more help, I'm there to help and we can get it done. But you all will be doing at least 2 process maps because you do want to have your current state, what it looks like, again, what that looks like today. And then after you've made your improvements, what it looks like afterwards. So I want to talk about process map basics, which is really just the shapes, right? So what the different shapes mean. So again, that oval is, like I mentioned before, the ovals it's a terminator. So you use the oval shape twice. You start a process and you end a process. That's what that's for. And again, the colors, these happen to be on here blue. They can be whatever color or no color at all. It doesn't matter. The rectangle shape, again, that is just a step in a process. I did this and then I did that kind of thing. Third one there, the diamond shape is again a decision point in a process. And again, like I mentioned before, every process map should have at least one decision point. That fourth piece there is called a Kaizen. It's called a Kaizen burst, and Kaizen, we'll talk a little bit about that. Well, Kaizen is a Japanese term, but it just basically means an idea. Here's an opportunity for an improvement. And a lot of times in a process map, your current state process map, after you process mapped it, right? You say, I do this, then I do this. Oh, should we do this? Oh, we do this, whatever. You already know the points where you're going, geez, we could probably fix here. We could probably fix there, that type of thing. Those Kaizen bursts, usually you just place those on a process map just to note that, hey, I know this area is not working, or I know this area is not working. And it's kind of just a way to indicate these are problem areas. Even at the end, when you're done with your project and you've moved on, something that has come up that is a parking lot kind of issue, even that may still be on your end process map, just to say, hey, we fixed all of these things and the project's wrapping up, but we do know there are other opportunities, and that Kaizen burst is just a way to put that down as far as a process map is concerned. Then this last one is just that direction line. And again, that's just, see, that's just all these different connecting lines in between all of the different steps and decisions and all of that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So now I want to talk about, could you, and this is a point where I would normally, if I had y'all in a classroom setting and I had whiteboards, I'd have everybody get up and say, I want each of you to do a process map of making a sandwich. Well, we don't have that. So what I'm going to do is say, let's map out the process steps of, and I would like your all input. I've got this laid out here too, but making a sandwich. So, and we'll say for purposes of this exercise here, we're making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So again, can anyone walk me through this and explain to me what this all means? Although I see actually my graphic.
You described how to make a sandwich step by step.
Right, and so walk me through that. So first step is putting out 2 pieces of bread, right?
Yes.
Then,
You put jelly on one side on one bread, and then you add peanut butter to the other. If
mhm.
you cut it in half, you put it on a plate, and you serve it. The end.
Right, and then this, and I apologize, this PowerPoint cut off my, there's another area. So if the answer was no, it comes out here. So it will go just directly to this plate and serve. Now, could this process map have more decision points in it?
Yes, because I like my bread toasted, so I would be toasting my bread before putting jelly or anything on it.
Right, so you can see, you could be like, that could be a decision point, right? Now for someone like you, if you know you always like your bread toasted, that's not a decision, right? You just, that's a step, right? But for some people, they're like, well, some days I like it toasted and some days I don't. And for some people, they may say, well, some days I want wheat bread and some days I want white bread. Or some people say, well, some days I want jelly and some days I want honey. Right? Or even with peanut butter, do I want smooth peanut butter or do I want chunky peanut butter? Or do I not want peanut butter at all? So again, this is a pretty high level map, right? This is pretty basic. This is really simple steps. Could I've gotten a little more complicated with this? Definitely,
Yes.
right? But really, ultimately, at the end of the day, when you do your process map, look at the level. I talk about 10,000 foot level. Go the level that makes this most sense. Now, am I going to, what would, if I were to write an SOP, standard operating procedure, for writing a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, would it be more detailed than this?
Yes.
What kinds of things would an SOP include that a process map wouldn't for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
I think on the SOP, you get more down to the nitty gritty than your map. Your map is just kind of like a visual of what needs to be done, and your SOP is what you're learning and training from.
Right, exactly. So an ideal SOP, and quite frankly, of the tools for Lean Six Sigma, an SOP is a tool. Process map is a tool. Those are, so again, SOP, in my mind, a good SOP should have a couple of things always, which is, what systems or what tools do you need to work a process? So if I'm doing a process where I'm, requires access to certain types of software, like in our world, TempWorks, for example, one thing you're going to say in an SOP, right, is, do whatever in TempWorks. Which means you're going to need access to TempWorks. Now, if you're doing an SOP for peanut butter jelly sandwich, something you're going to probably need access to is some silverware, right? You're going to, a knife, a spoon, something, right? Because I'm assuming that most of us don't make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with our hands, with just our fingers, right? So you're going to need, that tool, right? A knife at least, probably, maybe a spoon, whatever. Maybe a plate, or a napkin or something, right? So whatever tools you need should be listed on SOP, but you're not going to list that. Like, I didn't go into the detail of, I said, add jelly or add peanut butter to a slice of bread. I didn't say, get out a knife, put it on, do this, open the drawer, do this, put it in. That's SOP level. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So I've beaten that horse definitely to death. So let's jump into 5 whys. 5 whys is it's a tool this is also a tool for Lean Six Sigma. And it's kind of gone the routes around business as well. So many of you may have heard of this already. And 5 why is a way of getting into root cause analysis, or root cause. So really, why are we really doing something? By asking why 5 times, which is the idea behind this, you're getting truly into the root cause of something. So if you're looking at this example of, I was late for work. Well, why were you late to work? Well, You know, and it goes through all the steps. I'm not going to sit there and read all the things on the slide. It goes through all those different steps. And again, this is something where in a classroom I'd have y'all pair off or something and practice those. I'm not going to do that. We could get into breakout rooms in Zoom, but I'm not going to do that, just quite frankly, because that's difficult to manage. So what I want to do is I want to get into examples of 5Y, and let's come up with a scenario, and I'm going to ask for a couple volunteers to do a 5Y exercise with each other or with me. Do I have 2 folks to be willing to volunteer, or else I'll volunteer you?
I volunteer.
Sweet. Aisha, how about you and Maria?
Yeah.
Okay, so scenario, Maria was supposed to bring a document into you for work and she forgot it. So I want you to start that question, and Maria, make up whatever response you want to do and go for it. So go ahead and start, Aisha, just by asking Maria, hey, I needed that document. Why didn't you give it to me?
Hey, Maria, I needed that document. Why didn't you give it to me?
Oh, I forgot.
Okay. What was going on? Why did you forget?
Oh, you know, work, kids. Yeah, I just forgot.
Okay. What were you, I guess, did you write it down? Do you usually set reminders for yourself? Like, what is your, I guess, process to remember some of these things?
Just in my brain. My brain is a calendar.
Okay. Let's see. Brain is a calendar. Huh. Why do you use your brain as a calendar rather than, writing things down, given that you forgot it this time?
I love trees, and when you write on paper, you're wasting paper. So my brain.
Well, with technology fast developing, there are other ways of remembering things besides writing down paper and wasting trees.
See, I'm so old school. I have a flip phone. I can't even save that to my phone. It's like by minutes. I don't even have a contract on it.
So work provides us with things like with resources that we could use, such as a notepad. Why don't you use one of those and keep it with you so that way you could remember certain things?
Once again, a notepad is paper. I can't write on it.
Okay, so Maria's being a tough cookie, right? She's being a tough cookie. And quite frankly, you're probably not going to get quite those responses. So
actually, if you think about it, from our temps, those are kind of answers you get from our employees.
So when they do that, ultimately at the end of the day is, quite frankly, and I can use something where we had an employee that was placed out who had an on-site comment to them, asked them for something, and that person kind of pulled the culture card on them and said, in our culture, I'm like your uncle, you shouldn't speak to me like that. In other words, trying to shut someone down. And once anyone does that, or someone went the Maria route and gives those extreme responses, my first response is, this is work, that we're not at home, this is work, and there are certain expectations for work, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we have to get things done. So if you go into someone who gets in those kinds of extremes, that's where I go. I have had that happen where someone's like, well, why didn't you come to a meeting? Well, I just didn't think it would be that important. And my response, quite frankly, I don't necessarily go into deep why. If I get that type of response, quite frankly, I jump past the 5 whys and just go into, well, there is an expectation, your manager has an expectation that you will be attending this, or whatever. If someone says, well, I got really busy and I forgot, whatever, then we can get into, you've got access to a calendar that can set reminders. You've got electronic reminders. You've got access to a phone, and even the most the most dumb phone can give you some sort of reminder. People have watches, people have things, people that can write one post-it note and stick it on their keyboard, right, saying meeting at 9 o'clock every day or whatever that may be. So they've got those things. But when you get into different things, when someone says, for instance, in my world, because I'm in charge of risk and safety, someone, quite frankly, a classic response I'll see when, why did something happen? Well, that person wasn't paying attention. No, then I ask, well, why? Well, they were really busy and things were moving this and there were more people there than usual. Well, why were there more people there than usual? It could be another question. Well, because, you know, they had a lot of extra orders, they had to fill these things, they had to do those things. Well, were there, why were there not processes in place to supervise the additional employees? Well, they forgot to do something, whatever, right? Or someone slipped on the floor. Why did they slip on the floor? They weren't paying attention. Well, why did they slip? Well, there was water on the floor. Well, why was there water on the floor? Well, it was in the break room and it got spilled and it didn't get cleaned up. Well, why didn't it get cleaned up? Well, normally the maintenance people clean it up, but the guy in charge of maintenance is on vacation. Well, why didn't he appoint someone, or wasn't someone appointed to take over for them or for his team while he was gone? Well, you know, so ultimately at the end of the day, you may find something could be, maybe it's a management problem, right? A process problem. Somebody, you know, heaven forbid someone take a day off, right? And something that didn't get care of because there weren't proper coverage, or it could be something, really you dig into it, because a lot of the point of all of this is really get in there and dig, ask questions. And again, I remind people, I'm asking questions not just to be a pest. I mean, quite frankly, that's a personal bonus for me, but it's to be able to dig in, understand questions. And part of this too, this comes into the emotional intelligence piece by asking a lot of questions. Why are we doing something? Tell me what you do and why you do it. That why you do it piece too, when I ask questions like that, that's not only to understand, for my understanding of about a process, it's for me to know how much someone else is understanding about the process. Do they really understand their processes, that they're working and they're functioning, that they're working, or are they pushing buttons because they were told to push a button? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
Why would it be important for me to understand the difference between someone who truly understands their processes versus someone who's just pushing buttons, we'll call it?
You'd probably want to know where the disconnect is. Like if someone does know the process but is missing something, then you know how to train and help. But if someone is just pushing buttons, then they're just being a smartass.
Well, and not really, and I don't mean pushing buttons in far as creating problems. It means like, I know I click here, I move this, I do this, but I don't know the reasons behind it. If I don't know the reason behind something, then I also may not understand if there's a problem to even know that there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really big issue. I can give the example of previous life. I worked with someone who was working a project, and she was working with a team that dealt with a lot of paperwork. They were doing storage stuff, and they were manually scanning all these individual pieces of paper. She came up with a way to electronically, scan them faster. They upgraded the machine. That's a kind of easy no-brainer. But then also created this big, massive access database to do all this stuff, and basically created this database where this person was actually quite literally pushing buttons. I mean, the buttons were on the computer screen, but okay, I've gathered all this information. I don't have to create all these big fancy spreadsheets. I can just scan it all in, it all goes in automatically, and I push this button, and then I push this button and this button. The person, she saved that person tons of time, so she's like, cool, project done, it's over. My hand went up and said, you created this really cool tool, And that's fantastic. And I mean, and quite frankly, the team that got it, the main person and the rest of the team that got it were so excited. One woman was actually teared up. She was so excited because she knew how much time it was going to save her and really saved the whole team tons of money. But the problem with that was that the control piece, nobody knew enough about that tool that this person built, this software, to even be able to identify if there was a problem. And within 6 months, something happened. Somebody did something, and there was problem. Basically, it's an Access database. I don't know, for those of you who are familiar with Access, some of the formulas in it got screwed up, and basically the database broke. They were working in that thing for a month or so before anyone even realized there was a problem. And then they had to go back and recreate steps. And within 8 months of the beginning of the project, they were back to doing things the way they had done them before, because nobody knew how to fix it. Nobody knew, first of all, how to identify there was a problem, and nobody knew how to fix it. Meanwhile, the person who had done that initial work was like, cool, here y'all go, threw it on a silver platter, there you go, and was off to the next project. So again, getting into that why, one of the reasons for the why, part of that, getting into that root cause. Do they know the why behind what they're doing? Do they know how to even identify currently what's wrong? Do they know how to, and then certainly once you fix things, do the 5 why again. And again, 5 why is a tool, and this is not rocket science, right? Do it again as a way to kind of check yourself with your own project. Cool, I made these great improvements. Is it going to be sustainable? All right. So I want to practice this one more time, having dug into this a bit. And would anyone like to, would anyone like to ask me some 5 why question? Let's do a 5 why with me. Someone who's not Aisha or Maria. Bueller?
Oh, I have a question, Shauna.
Okay. Yep.
I'm Maritza. So I was looking at your signature. You have a her, she on top of your name on your email signature. What does that mean and why?
I have tell me again, I have a what on there?
It says her and she in parentheses.
Oh, her and she, that's identifying the gender.
Oh, okay, so that's what that means. Oh, I just wanted to ask that question. Why?
I do that because, and that's a great question. I do that because in the HR world, which I'm not in charge of HR, right, but I'm peripherally related to it, it's acknowledging people who don't identify as standard he or she. There's people that identify differently, and it's to be inclusive of them, to give people a more open space.
More open space? Why do they need more open space?
Because traditionally they've not been included in things, and even in some cases there's been prejudice against them.
Why is there not a process in place?
There hasn't been a process in place because I think culturally that's not been something that people have been willing to do. And I think as a society, we're changing to be more inclusive, whether it's someone's ethnic background, religious background, their how they identify gender, all of those different things. That's just, I think, certainly not just in the world, but certainly in the United States, that's where this country is moving to. It. But there hasn't been a process in place, and I'm seeing that more and more. And I attended a seminar relatively recently saying including that on your signature is important, and it makes a statement about the company and certainly about me.
Okay, I think that's it.
Yeah, and that's good. So again, digging in, asking why. Well, I could just say, oh, it's there because I want to be inclusive. Well, why? Why is that important, right? So it's digging into why, all the whys. So again, and perfectly for all of you, when you have to deal with me, more than one, I'm sure there's at least one of you out there, and she says smiling, that has had me ask questions after you've sent me an incident report. And incidents happen, you fill out an incident report, you send it in. Raise your hand if you've never had me ask you a question about it.
Not lately.
Not lately, right? But you have, right? And part of the reason y'all have heard me ask about details, right? Give me details. I want details. I'm super greedy. I want all the facts. I want all the detail. Why would all that detail be important?
We need to document everything and have a lot of detail.
Why do we need to document everything?
Workers' comp.
Why workers' comp? Why is workers' comp important?
Can I chime in?
Yep.
So I don't think any of the new Utah staff was here when we did that corporate training for Onsites. But you did this training and you wrote little slips with like different incident reports, and you passed it around the group, and you're like, so if you read this and you were me, could you understand exactly what the incident was? And a lot of us were like, no. And I remember I got mine back and I was reading it and I was like, oh, if this wasn't mine, I would not be able to explain what happened. So that's another reason to Moraima is when we're filling out the incident reports, we have to get into much detail, because if Shauna's not here and someone else is filling it out, they have to be able to understand what exactly happened to that person, or even if it's years later, to understand what happened.
Right. Well, and I don't want to squirrel the conversation too much, but that's exactly right. The more detail you can give, you're telling a story. And whether it's dealing with an incident report, you're working on a project, whatever that may be, because if you come back 6 months later or a year later or 2 years later and need to answer a question about something, even if it's something that you did and you were very involved in and you knew all the ins and outs, after a certain period of time, I don't know about you, but I may not remember every tiny detail the way I did when it was super fresh in my mind. By having that kind of detail, again, whether it's an incident report, a project, or whatever, anyone ever heard that CYA thing, right? You're covering yourself. You're covering yourself, you're protecting yourself in your role, you're protecting the company, you're protecting anyone who's involved. In a case of an incident report, you're also protecting an employee. It's not just protecting us against it, it's in protecting everybody involved. This is what happened, this is what we do, this is the process. It's all of those things. Get into that nitty-gritty detail, question everything. And I say this, I'll leave this up, and I cannot, and I will say this for those of you who deal with me in work, I am excited when I get people who ask me questions. I like it when you ask me questions. I love it when, I don't care if you're asking me the same question 2 or 3 times. I would far rather you ask me the same question 2 or 3 times, or 4 or 5 times, or whatever it takes, so that you truly understand the process. I'll use an example that I've always told my kids, which is your responsibility as a student at school is to certainly sit in place and listen to the teacher and learn your stuff, but it's also to speak up if you don't understand something, because the teacher's got however many kids in a classroom. And if you don't say anything and you're moving along, they're going to assume you understood what they said. If you don't understand, you need to raise your hand and speak up. Same thing at work. If you don't understand, raise your hand and speak up. Certainly do respectively. I've never walked up to somebody and said, well, I think what you said was really unclear and I don't understand at all what you said, but you can. I have more than once said, I didn't quite get what you said, or can you explain that in a little bit more detail? I want to make sure I have it. Or a lot of times too, I will even repeat what I say. If I may, I'm going to repeat what I understood. So please tell me if I'm wrong. Something along those lines. So again, it's a way of getting in there, digging in. Also too, by the process of doing that, you're understanding more about it, but you're also getting them to explain more detail. You'll pull more detail out of people by doing that as well. Understand more about a process, understand more about their understanding of a process. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So I need to whip through the last little bit here, hopefully not too fast because we've spent a lot of time here. Critical to quality is a pretty basic business term, and what critical to quality really it comes down to is you want to determine when you're working a project is what items or things in a project, in a process, are critical to the quality of your process. We talked before about over processing and that VW bug, that visual of had all these kinds of things, blah, blah, blah. Those are nice to haves maybe, but is it critical to the how something functions? It may or may not. So that's what critical to quality is. Ultimately, at the end of the day is whatever thing you're doing, does it either contribute to the value of something for the customer, whoever your customer may be, or is it something that they would pay extra for, kind of a thing? Like, geez, I'm going to provide you this extra service and I'm going to do this, this, and this for you. Well, God, that's fantastic. And as a bonus, I'm going to wear a red shirt. Do they care about that? No. Is that critical to quality? No, not really. And I'm being slightly facetious there. But does that make sense? I mean, critical to quality is really picking apart the nice to haves, the things that make a difference for the recipient of your project, your customer, and you can call it fluff, but sometimes it's not really fluff, the extras. All right. And then talk.
I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Hello?
Sorry about my thing. Can you hear? All right. So let's talk really briefly about customer. Who is your customer? For the purposes of your project, your customer is whoever is a recipient of the process, the project, what you're trying to improve. That could be a client. It could be a peer. It could be your teammates. It could be your manager. It could be the company. It could be employees, right? So it's not necessarily someone up high that is your customer. It could be, again, peers, or it could be teammates. It could be me. It could be, right? So when we talk about customer in terms of project of Lean Six Sigma and project management, your customer is, again, not the person paying for something or buying services necessarily. It could be someone internal as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So for you all who have identified projects, who is your customer?
Employees, applicants, and clients.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things you'll be doing as part of your project is you'll be collecting plans or collecting data, and a data collection plan sounds really fancy, but really that's just, what is my plan to get information? What information do I need? A data collection plan is a tool for Lean Six Sigma. And again, guys, this is not brain surgery, rocket science, or whatever metaphor we can use. This is basic stuff. Who do I need? It's the who, what, when, where, and why. Who do I need to talk to? What kind of information should I be asking? What kind of detail do I need from them? Including what are their expectation for me working on this project? What would they like to see? That's called voice of the customer. What do they want? What's important to them? What's critical to them? Because what I think would be critical to them may not be as important for them. So that's part of this, part of all of this, gathering this information, understanding understanding all of that. All right. I'm throwing this up there. I'm not going to spend actually any time on this at all, we'll talk about it later. This is called a value stream map. It looks pretty complicated, quite frankly. Really what this is this is steps of a process maps, individual process steps, but it's got all this, each step has all this additional information. That additional information is talking about motion, is talking about time. Not everybody will do a value stream map, and again, I'll help you with that. But when you've got a process that you're changing and you're trying to improve, if you're doing a process that in particular involves reducing the amount of times somebody works on something, a value stream map is a very helpful tool. And it's a very good tool at the end of the day to show. It's kind of an aha kind of a tool. And I can show you. So you can say, look, it takes me 10 minutes to do this, 5 minutes to do that, 20 minutes to do that, but 3 hours to do that. Well, that's how that kind of thing works. And basically it's, I tend to term this as a souped up process map is really what this says. Again, I'm not gonna spend a ton of time on that because when I do, people's eyes tend to glaze over, and because of the confines of time, I want to mention it because there will be a point for some of you when you work your projects, I will say a value stream map would be valuable for this. Let's work on this. So I want to at least mention it. So some of you may be aware it would be something that we can work on together. And just briefly again, voice of the customer is also a tool, understanding what is important to them, what consequences do they want to see, what preferences do they have. Again, like I mentioned before, what is the voice of your customer? Certainly identify your customer, but then understand what do they want? Who is your customer? What's important to them? That's what this is about. This is another one I'm throwing up here. Not everyone will calculate sigma. Back in the day when I did my initial sigma training, like I mentioned before, it was 6 weeks. We sat and did do the math and they made us do it all by hand, and quite frankly, it was a headache. Calculating sigma, do you need to know the difference of where your process is? The process was at 4 sigma, but I'm making it 6 sigma, or my process is at 2 sigma and I'm making it 5 sigma. Not necessarily, but you can. My buddy Google has tons of tools. If you Google Six Sigma calculator, those 3 words, you'll get all kinds of tools that just will calculate it for you, so you don't have to do all the math. And quite frankly, not every project will have this, but I want to mention it again because this is Lean Six Sigma. Six Sigma is part of it, and understanding what a Sigma level is, which again is that variability in a process, right? How accurate, how clean, if you will, your process is. And winding up here, I'll hurry. I realize we're going over. I won't go over more than about 5 minutes here. This is called a fishbone diagram. It looks complicated, but really it's about what your problem is, what you're trying to solve, which is this here at the very end, accident prevention. Then it talks about different contributing factors that may contribute to it, and then all the different details that go in. This is one that's fully fleshed out. And let's look at a basic one, which we don't have time to do. I would like to sit and fishbone something, but basically it's cause and effect is what a fishbone is. A fishbone diagram. And obviously it's called fishbone because it looks a little bit like a fishbones, right? So again, that effect is at the head of that fish, so to speak, and then different causes. It could be, is it something not being measured properly? Is it, the method that we're doing it? Is it the equipment, the tools that we're using is a problem? Is it people, and I'm not saying, oh, Bob does a bad job. Is Bob not properly trained? That's training, right, is a huge factor in some problem. Is the environment, and I'm talking about environment, birds and trees, I'm talking about the business environment. Bob knows there's problems, but the environment is Bob continually has been shut down on any suggestions or even being able to call anything out, so nothing happens. Is that, that kind of environment is what that's talking about. Then materials. Bob isn't given proper, potentially doesn't have the proper PPE, doesn't doesn't have the right tools for the job. All of those kinds of things. And again, if you Google, again, my buddy Google has all kinds of great things out there. And I have sent you all that Excel spreadsheet has has templates for a lot of these tools in there. You can use these templates or use something different. If you Google something, you see one that you like better, or you want to tweak the one you own, is one I've provided or another one you found, that's fine. The point is to use a version of these. And there are a lot of different versions of Fishbones as far as the different causes that are out there. Okay, just lastly, again, I've mentioned it before, Project Charter is a tool, and it is, again, that high level, and I apologize again, I need to fix this graphic. It's getting that high level of understanding what is your problem you're solving, what's the business case, the time frame you're solving, the team, the scope, the team involved, all of those different things. Everyone should have a project charter. We'll talk tomorrow about A3s. You all do an A3, which is a more detailed dashboard as well. And again, when we're talking about certifying for projects, Yellow Belt having 5 tools and Green Belt doing a total of 15 tools. When you look at all these different tools, everyone's going to have 2 process maps. Each process map counts as a separate tools because they're being used differently. Everyone will have an A3, which again, we'll talk about tomorrow. That's just a basic dashboard. Project Charter is for your higher level team. You'll do that. And then of course you'll have something to control thing like an SOP or something like that, some sort of audit in place. That right there is your 5 tools, right? So that's, again, none of this is rocket science. Then if you start throwing in things like 5 whys, brainstorming, SWOT analysis, we'll talk about that tomorrow. You can see building up even to 15 or more tools is something pretty simple. A lot of times when I tell people you need to have 15 tools, they get very intimidated, but try and make this as flexible as possible, because the point is being able to, first of all, pick things apart, understand how they're working, put them back together, ideally in a better state, right? And then to ultimately, again, have controls in place to make them work better and to make sure they're functioning. And again, remember, it's called continuous improvement for a reason. There's always that control piece in there. All right?
Yes.
Does anyone, that was a ton of stuff thrown at you really fast. And again, I apologize with these 1-hour sessions. I feel like I'm just chucking things at you. Does anyone have any questions?
No.
None at all. Wow, I'm that good, huh? All right. Well, we'll get into more tools tomorrow and wrap up Friday with a few more tools, as well as talking about next steps for those working projects, start off points, and how it'll look for the 6 months after. So that's what I have for today. And I thank you all. I did go over a few minutes. Thank you all for your time, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.
All right, have a good day. Be
Bye.
safe.
Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
Everybody be safe. Have a good day.